everybody. This is my July 2024 reading wrap up. This month I finished one book that I had started in June. I read 8 full novels. I had 1 DNF. I read 1 book of 20 short stories. I read 10 individual short stories. And I'm currently still reading 3 books that I started this month. One of them is my Pick It For Me book for August, which I started a little bit early. So I'm not going to tell you what that one is in this video because it's going to be included in my August TBR video. First off, the book that I started in June and finished this month was Tekla by Stephen Brust. This is one of the books in the Vlad Talto series that I've been buddy reading for a while now. We had taken a break and decided to continue on with the series in June, and we are reading these in chronological order, not in publication order. So this was the next book in chronological order. After that, I read my Pick It For Me book for July. This was The Lost Husband by Catherine Center. I decided to add this one to my reading list after I read Happiness for Beginners, which I also saw the movie version of. I had seen the movie version of this one too, so this seemed like a good one to read second. And I ended up really liking this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. After The Lost Husband, I decided to start reading some short stories because my in-person book club for August is going to be reading short stories. We're each going to pick a short story and bring it with us to share with the rest of the group. And I don't read a lot of short stories unless they're connected to a book series I'm reading. So I needed to do some research. First up, I decided to try one by Zach Argyle. This is from the author of the Threadlight trilogy. This one was called 5 Silver Rings, and it was free for signing up for his newsletter. I really ended up liking this little fantasy short story, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I found some free audio collections of short stories on Kindle Unlimited. One was called The Far Reaches, the other one was called The Forward Collection. So I listened to some different short stories from both of these by some well-known authors that I've read before. A couple of the authors I had not read anything from before. The first one I read was from the Far Reaches collection. It was How It Unfolds by James S.A. Corey. I've read a couple of the Expanse books by James S.A. Corey, and I saw the TV series that was based on the books, and I really enjoyed it. I was expecting to like this story a little bit more than I did. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was good, it just wasn't great. Then after that, I ended up reading The Long Game by Ann Leckie. This one is also in the Far Reaches collection, and I really enjoyed this one in the beginning. I was really into the story. However, I do feel like it fell flat in the end, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Next up, I read Summer Frost by Blake Crouch from the Forward collection. This one I didn't like at all. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I know we're probably not supposed to like the characters in the story, but I need a character that I can like, even if it's in a short story. So this one didn't work for me. It was also kind of predictable. After that, I read The Void by Veronica Roth from the Far Reaches collection, and this one I also didn't really like. I gave it 2.5 stars. It was a space mystery, and I feel like it was just kind of boring. There wasn't anything exciting about this story. I feel like short stories really need to draw you in from the beginning because they're so short, and if they don't, they just end up being kind of dull. Next from the Forward collection was You Have Arrived at Your Destination. I enjoyed this one. It really kept me engaged through the whole thing. However, I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I feel like there were too many questions left unanswered for it to be a really satisfying story. Next, I read Randomized by Andy Weir. I've read Project Hail Mary and The Martian by Andy Weir. Both of those stories were okay stories to me. I think I gave them both 3 stars, but they weren't spectacular to me. I feel like I get a little bored with Andy Weir's stories when he gets into all of the science stuff too much, but they were better than this short story. This short story I gave 2 out of 5 stars to. It just seemed rather pointless. It's a story about a heist, but I just didn't care for the way the whole thing happened. And the last individual short story that I read was called Signal Moon by Kate Quinn. I've never read anything else by this author, but I know that she writes, I think, mainly historical fiction. And I have several friends who enjoy her books. This one ended up being my favorite short story out of all the short stories that I read or listened to this month. If you've seen the movie Frequency that was made in 2000 or saw the CW series on TV that was based on it, that will kind of give you an idea of what this is like. It involves a radio. So I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. And it ended up being the short story that I decided I would bring to my book club. After that, I read my Hercule Poirot book for the month, and it was Elephants Can Remember. This was an okay story in the series. Not a favorite, but it wasn't bad. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do feel like the earlier Hercule Poirot books were better than the later ones. After this, I have only 2 more Hercule Poirot novels, and I will be done with all the full-length books in the series, and I'll just have like around 50 short stories to read. So I am looking forward to getting to the short stories. I've read a couple of them, but I have a long way to go before I'm done with the series. After that, I read Loaded by B.E. Baker. This was an advanced reader copy that I got from the author. This is the 4th book in the Scarsdale Foster series. I've been thoroughly enjoying this series, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I moved on to one of the mystery book club reads for the month, and that was After Dark by Minka Kent. This one I really enjoyed. It ended up being one of my favorites by Minka Kent. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Just like all of her books, this was a twisty psychological suspense. Next, I read a book of short stories by Lawrence Watt Evans. There were 20 of his short stories in this book. It's called Cross Time Traffic. Last year, one of my friends for our book club, we do a short story thing every year now, and she brought Why I Left Harry's All Night Hamburgers by Lawrence Watt Evans, and it ended up being one of my favorite short stories. So I decided I wanted to try reading more of Lawrence Watt Evans' short stories. So I picked up this book on Kindle, and it was a mixed bag. There were some that I gave 3.5 stars to, there were some I gave 3 stars to, and there were, I think, 3 of them that I only gave 2 stars to, with the only 4-star one being Why I Left Harry's All Night Hamburgers. I just didn't like any of the other ones quite as much as that, but there were some pretty good stories in this collection, and I'm not going to tell you about all of the stories. I'll give you the ones that I rated the highest. First, Why I Left Harry's All Night Hamburgers is a story about a diner that's a stopping point for travelers from alternate realities, and it's also a grass isn't always greener kind of story. So I really like that message about it, and that one is 4 stars. The next one I gave 3.5 stars to is called An Infinity of Karen, and this is about a man looking for his true love across different realities. Then there was Stormtrooper. These rest of these are all going to be 3.5 stars. Stormtrooper is about characters that end up being dumped in realities that they don't belong in. The next one was Real Time. This one is about a traveler that goes to murderous lengths to change the past. But did he actually change the past, or is he just crazy. Then there was One Night at a Local Bar. This story is about an alien who goes to a bar and he gets discriminated against because he's different by a bunch of characters that are misfits themselves. Next was science fiction. This one, if I had to describe it, I would say it's like if Phineas and Ferb lived on a space station, and maybe they weren't quite as smart. But really, the kids in this book build a spaceship in their backyard and no one notices. Next, there was Windwagon Smith and the Martians. This is about a man that's kidnapped by Martians so that he can participate in a race with the Windwagon that he's invented. And the last one that I gave 3.5 stars to is The Man Who Loved Dragons. This story is about a man who's obsessed with dragons and collects dragon memorabilia, coffee mugs, statues, pillows, you name it. They have dragons on them. And his niece is worried that he's mentally ill because of this. After Cross Time Traffic, I kept going with the short story binge, and I picked up The Lady in Glass and Other Stories by Anne Bishop. I picked this one up specifically because I wanted to read the two stories that were set in the world of the others. So I read those and I thought they were both pretty good, both 3-star reads, nothing spectacular, but I enjoyed them. The rest of the stories in this book are short stories that are related to series that I haven't read yet. But there are a few I think that aren't set in any of her series that I may read later. After that, I decided to squeeze in a romance. Love in the Bargain by Casey Stockton. This is the first book in the Women of Worth series. If you watched my June wrap-up, then you know that I read the third book in this series, and I read it because I was looking for a book with a pink cover for a reading challenge. So I'm reading these kind of out of order. I'm going back to the beginning now to start with book 1, and then I'll go from there and read the other books that I haven't read. This one I enjoyed not quite as much as book 3, but I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read one of my buddy read books, Precursor by C.J. Cherryh, the 4th book in the Foreigner series. This was a 4-star read for me. I'm thoroughly enjoying the series. I feel like it gets better and better, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series and reading the next book in August. Okay, after that, I got to the dreaded book club book that my in-person book club picked. If you watched my TBR video for July, then you know that I wasn't crazy about this book. I read the reviews. They were very mixed, and there were quite a few bad ones. And I really didn't think it was going to be for me, but I gave it a chance, and I have to say, unfortunately, it really wasn't for me. This is the book that I didn't finish this month, so it was my lone DNF, and I got halfway through this book and decided to skip to the last couple of chapters, and so that's what I did, and I read enough of it that I felt like I could give it a rating, and I rated it 1 star. And finally, this month, I got to one of the books that I've had on my shelf for a while. I've been putting it off because I didn't have time for it, but I finally read Murder in Rose Hill by Victoria Thompson. This is the latest book in the Gaslight Mystery series, book 27 to be exact. So I read a lot of books in this series. This one was mediocre, and I feel like a lot of the books in this series are 3-star reads for me, or 3.5, but yet I still want to keep coming back to this series. I'm not sure why. I think it's just because I love the characters. So this one was a 3-star read. One thing that annoys me about this series is I feel like they're not very intelligent in their investigations, and they miss things that they shouldn't, and they make assumptions when maybe they shouldn't, and base what they think happened off of these assumptions and as though they're facts. So that annoys me about the series. But one thing happened at the end that I've been waiting to happen for several books now. Unfortunately, the way it ended up happening was slightly lackluster, but I was still happy that we finally had this development. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody that's reading the series. Then the last book that I finished this month was Mage's Endgame by Tilly Wallace. This was the 6th book in the Tournament of Shadows series. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I think I've given all but maybe one of these books 3 out of 5 stars. This series was a mediocre series for me, but it was a prequel series to another one that I had really enjoyed by the author, and I just feel like I would have liked this series a lot better if it had been a trilogy and not 6 whole books. It just feels like it got dragged out too long. The 2 books that I'm still reading that I'm going to talk about first is Nightfall by David Estes. This is book 4 in the Kingfall histories. This book is so good. I'm enjoying this epic fantasy series so much, and I'm so glad that I got to come back to these after having to keep putting it on the back burner for a year or more because of other books that kept getting in the way. This is a big book. This is over 800 pages, and it takes me a while to read these big books. And I really can only handle one epic fantasy book a month. So when I've got other ones I'm reading that get in the way, I just run out of steam and don't feel like I can get to another one. Anyway, this is probably going to be like a 4.5 or 5-star read for me, but we'll see. And the other book that I'm still reading is one that I'm reading with my husband. We finished the Mercy Thompson series and the Alpha and Omega series, and we're trying to find another one that we can listen to together. It is Steel World by B.V. Larson. It's the first book in the Undying Mercenary series. It started out good. There are things I'm enjoying about it. However, I am not liking the way the female characters are being portrayed in this so far, so I'm not sure if we're going to continue this book or not. We'll see. Anyway, that is my reading wrap up for July, and if you're enjoying my channel, make sure to like and subscribe and even comment, and I will see you in my TBR video. Bye!